Welcome to the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast, episode number 26. My name's Ashwin, and this week we're bringing to you a special episode of our show. As you know, India has just completed a very long tour of England that started with T20s, then we had some ODIs, and is now wrapped up with a 5-test match series that just finished at the Oval with England winning 4-1. So instead of just hearing the three of us talk, we decided to collaborate with the Cricket Badger podcast, a show that's focused on English cricket. And so this week, DJ, my co-blogger, joins up with James, the host of the Cricket Badger podcast, and they do a deep dive into the 5-test series that just happened, what worked for India, what worked for England, what lessons both teams can take forward, and how both teams will be preparing as they move their separate ways, with India going off to fight the Asia Cup and England going on a tour of Sri Lanka. So without further ado, we hope you enjoy the special production with James from the Cricket Badger podcast hosting my co-blogger DJ in a special episode.
DJ, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you, James. How are you, mate?
I'm okay, thank you. And I've actually just tweeted out that I'm a bit sad because it's the end of a very, very good series that I've enjoyed thoroughly. I've just seen them walking off at the Oval, and it's kind of like the full stop to the summer, really, and I want more of it.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I'm going to do, actually, tomorrow onwards. I've been down to watch the cricket at Lord's, went to the Oval for the first 3 days, was there at Nottingham for that famous win for India. So it really has been a great summer of Test cricket. Two good teams playing hard Test cricket, and well, in the end I think the best team won, and what a result for England. Perfect way to finish. Jimmy Anderson going past Glenn McGrath.
Yeah, exactly. 564 Test wickets going past Glenn McGrath, the leading pace bowler of all time in Test cricket. That's some achievement, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, it shows that there's the longevity, which is amazing. I can't remember a time that England didn't have him playing. Well, apart from the 2005 Ashes, which I think he still regrets missing a little bit. But, I mean, what a bowler. He has been a brilliant bowler for England in all conditions. And there has been some criticism of him in the past that he hasn't done well abroad. But he actually has. If you look at his record, it's fantastic, even outside of England. So, not a one-trick pony. And good on him.
564 wickets for Jimmy Anderson, 563 for Glenn McGrath. You look down the list, Courtney Walsh at 519, Capel Dev at 434, Stuart Broad at 433, not far behind him, but that's some company to be in, isn't it? And to be top of.
It really is. And I mean, the defining battle of the series, we didn't really see it come to the perfect end with Jimmy getting Kohli, because Broad had already got him last night. But I mean, he's just, I think, with Alastair Cook, probably one of England's greatest cricketers.
Absolutely.
No doubt in my mind.
Just watched both of them interviewed at the Oval. Tears in the eyes, Alastair Cook making his way into retirement. But what struck me really was that Jimmy Anderson and Stuart Broad seemed very emotional to see Alastair Cook go. They've been playing together for an awful long time, great friends on and off the pitch. It's the end of an era, isn't it, for English cricket?
It is, really. And I quite like the way Alastair Cook said at the post-match presentation that he'll be sorry not to drop any more catches and slip off those two. But I mean, it just shows what good friends they are. You saw the kind of farewell that Jimmy had given Alastair Cook just before the series as well. So, I mean, it's all in good fun, and I'm sure there's quite a lot of emotion going around the England dressing room at this stage.
I noticed, DJ, at the start of this chat that you mentioned the India win. The series is a lot closer than 4-1 suggests, isn't it? I mean, English fans will take 4-1, will be very pleased to have beaten certainly the ICC ranked number one side in the world. But I think India can take a lot from the series. They weren't really beaten by 4 test matches to 1, even though the records will show that.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's been a tough series for India. We've come close. I think Edgbaston was probably closer than Southampton, I would say. And we should have got over the line there. And I think that loss may have hurt India more than Southampton, where, truth be told, we weren't going to be chasing 245 on day 4 on a pitch that was turning square. Obviously, Lords, we got the worst of the conditions. And I go as far as saying almost anyone would have been bowled out on day 1 for around 120, 25, whatever it was. So yes, the conditions haven't gone in India's favour. India also didn't win a single toss this series, which I don't think helped the cause. And funnily enough, when we went through the stats for the entire tour, including the T20 as well as the one-day games, there's been just one game which the captain winning the toss hasn't won, and that was at Nottingham, where Joe Root inserted India and lost that game. Every other game on the tour has been won by the team that won the toss. So maybe there's a case to be had for getting rid of the toss and letting the visiting team choose.
Well, they do that in the county championship, don't they? And
Yeah.
I'm just looking down the batting records for the series, DJ, and you've got Virat Kohli sat at the top there, 5 test matches, 10 innings, 593 runs, and obviously out for a golden duck in his last visit to the crease. He could have been better than an average of 59.3. He's had a stellar summer and been head and shoulders for me above any of the other batsmen in the series. But I guess the problem for India, if you look further down that list, the next in line is KL Rahul with 299 runs, most of them coming today. Pujara there, who didn't play all the test matches, with 278 runs. A lack of consistency, I think, at the top of the order for India.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I think where we've really struggled is actually with our openers. I think Shikhar Dhawan, has probably run his course as a test match opener, especially abroad. And we're going to have to work out what to do with the opening spot. I think Rahul, with his innings today, has really cemented his spot for the next few test matches at the very least. But I think Shikhar Dhawan's probably going to be dropped. He's a great white ball cricketer. We're not sure that he's the right choice for red ball. We've got people coming up like Prithvi Shaw, 18-year-old. So maybe he'll get a shot back home against the West Indies. But I think where we have struggled is, apart from Kohli, no one's really stood up. And what has really hurt India is that Rahane hasn't scored too many runs, or when he's got a start, he hasn't converted that kind of 20 or 30 into big 100.
Yeah, just averaging 25.7 in the series.
Yeah, and I think that's what's really hurt India, because Rahane has actually been out of sorts for quite a while now. He was out of sorts in the Indian home summer against spin. He played the IPL and he didn't have a great IPL. He's then come to England. He's got, I think, one decentish score. I think he got 72 at Trent Bridge, where he was caught by Alastair Cook. A brilliant catch by him. But he hasn't kind of kicked on and gone on. And the part of the problem is, because of the packed schedule and the number of games that he plays, he hasn't got time to go back to domestic cricket and find form again. And so maybe that's something we need to look into, because that number 5 spot is absolutely crucial in a test match. And it needs to really be your engine room for producing runs. And Rahane hasn't been that player, so maybe we need to look into what to do with that number 5 spot. So I think top of the order and one spot in the middle order. I think Pujara has been fine. He's batted well. Kohli's obviously been absolutely amazing after his last tour here. He's kind of almost willed himself to success. But I think Rahane has been the real big disappointment for us as Indian fans, where we were used to seeing him score lots of runs. And in contrast, England have had kind of Joss Butler, Ben Stokes, Chris Woakes score 100. You've had Sam Curran scoring runs. Johnny Bairstow is obviously a capable batsman. Speaking of which, how's Johnny gone this season? I haven't had a chance to look at his stats, but been out of sorts, hasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I did check myself when I was asking you the previous question about India's wobbles at the top of the order, because England haven't been too much better, have they, to be honest? And Johnny Bairstow, they're kind of in a bit of limbo with him at the moment, wondering quite how to play him, I think, because there's a call from a few places to have Joss Butler maybe taking on the gloves. I know Johnny doesn't want to give the gloves up. He sees himself as very much an all-rounder and wants to keep those gloves. But if he's batting at number 5 and Joss Butler's at number 7, it does put a little bit more pressure on him maybe to score some runs. And 230 runs from him in 9 innings at 25 isn't really the return we've been used to over the last 2 years, because he has been, probably certainly in the top 3 English batsmen, with Cook and Root churning out the runs at the top of the order. Definitely they've missed runs from him. Obviously, Cook has kind of redeemed his series with the runs he scored in his farewell test match. Joe Root as well, with the 125 at the Oval, has almost doubled his tally for the series. So there's a number of question marks about England's top order. They're going to have to obviously go away and try and replace somebody that scored 12,000 odd test runs as well before the Sri Lanka tour too. So yeah, there's a lot of question marks there. But what England have had that India haven't had this year is what you've said, a number 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 even, who come in and score 50s, even centuries, and basically save the day. The first 4 test matches weren't big scoring test matches anyway, and Sam Curran twice came in and got a very feisty 50 and really did turn the test match around twice.
Plus Moeen as well, don't forget his contribution. He got 40 odd, I think, in the first innings at
exactly.
Southampton, which was, I mean, it in the final analysis of things, I think it's those 40s and kind of 30s from the lower order which have just changed the nature of the series and how it's actually gone. So I know India will be hurting. They'd come here thinking that they kind of got a shot at winning this series and winning it well. They will be hurting, and I can almost tell you now that Kohli will be thinking about the next time he's back here, which will, I don't know whether it's 3 or 4 years away, but it's already on his mind.
It's not all doom and gloom though, DJ. I mean, we saw a 20-year-old today, Rishabh Pant. He struggled this series so far with the bat. He has probably struggled even more with the gloves, it has to be said, but his innings today was exceptional.
Yeah. Well, he's. I think he was the Orange Cap winner this year at the IPL. So he's the top scorer there. He's got a bit of a rating from Rahul Dravid, who was with the India A team that he was touring England with previously, as someone who can play according to the situation. And we saw his shots. He's got all the shots. He just needs to kind of learn how to bat in a test match, what the tempo of the game is. Because before tea, you almost wonder what happened after tea, because he was playing proper shots before tea, and then he just kind of decided to tee off after tea. So I wonder what was said in the dressing room, whether they were told to go after the target. But he almost changed his game after tea, and well, we saw what happened. It was a bit of a strange shot to get out, but
that shot wasn't the shot to play, was it? Just after you've lost your partner, that big turner from Rashid, seeing the end to KL Rahul, and then Pant going just afterwards. That was basically when India, effectively the full stop came to that Test match, wasn't it?
Yeah, speaking of which, I mean, I think we finally found out what Adil Rashid was doing in this team. He was waiting for that ball.
Oh, don't you start slagging off my mate Adil. I've been a big defender of Adil Rashid this season, and I just don't understand what Joe Root's doing with him. Because I've spent a lot of time around Yorkshire cricket, and I know what a talent he can be. But he's a sort of talent, DJ, who basically needs to feel wanted, to feel loved, to feel like he's contributing, and to have that confidence running through him. And you saw what happened today when he got a bit of a spell under his, through his arms, and started seeing the turn there, and realised that he was going to get a good bowl. He started turning that ball and started to be a real threat towards the end of that spell. And I just think, if England just had a bit more confidence in him, I think he would return the favour and actually bowl a lot better. But he's played all 5 Test matches, but he hasn't actually bowled that many overs. He's still taken 10 wickets. That ball that got Rahul was an absolute jaffa, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it's the best I've actually seen him bowl. It was better than the one that got Kohli in the one-day game as well. And so I'd say that is the best ball I've seen this. I think Josh Boysden bowled a nice one in the Blast, but I think that was the best one all summer. And what a time to do it. India were 5 down, a partnership that got kind of India into the hunt for the target. And Rashid just comes along around the wicket, rips one out of the rough, hits top of off.
Yeah,
guy batting on 149.
I mean, you could see from Rahul's face there, just it took him by complete surprise, didn't it? Because he was playing so well and his defence had looked so solid, and yet that ball just ripped across him, took his off bail out, and Rahul just wide-eyed. Kind of that was the end of the series. The kind of one-day series with Kohli doing the same thing against Rashid. It was like bookended the whole summer, didn't it? Really?
Oh, that's exactly it. I mean, and as you said, a spinner like him needs someone to handle him with kid gloves. Needs someone to give him confidence. Needs someone to give him the feel. Just give him a bit of love. And I mean, you're going to Sri Lanka next, and he should play there, and he should be one of your strike bowlers there. Moeen Ali is your second spinner behind Rashid.
Yeah, I couldn't understand today, DJ, why it took Joe Root so long to bring Rashid into the attack. Because it's day 5. There was obviously some turn in that wicket, and you're defending a total which is mammoth, and yet you can't bring your leg spinner on until just the one over before lunch and then into the afternoon.
Now I can't work that out myself, and I mean, to be honest, one of the things I wanted to ask you a little bit about is what have you thought about the captaincy in this series, from not just from Kohli but from Joe Root as well. There was a point at which there was a deep point for Ravi Jadeja. I think it was 330 for 7, and Jadeja was on 3 of 27 balls. Some of the captaincy, I mean, it's obviously Kohli's let the game drift, to my mind, in several places. But what have you thought about the captaincy in this series?
I don't think it's been fantastic. I think you've had situations a lot of the time where the seam bowlers have been in the ascendancy, so it's been quite easy to actually rotate your bowlers because it's obviously who's going to do the damage. But in terms of field placings and some of the decisions that have been made throughout the series, I think both captains, like you say, haven't necessarily been ahead of the game. I think Joe Root's got still a lot to learn as captain. You've basically got a situation in both sides, DJ, where you've got the best player on both sides effectively taking the reins, haven't you? And it doesn't necessarily always mean they're the greatest tacticians and the greatest thinkers in the team. I've not rated Kohli's captaincy for a long time. I think he's obviously very hard on his sleeve. He's very passionate. My jury's been out on him for some time because he's obviously an incredible player. To me, he's the best batsman in the world at the moment, probably across all formats. And I love watching him play because in the field, you know exactly what he's thinking. He's up, he's down, his face is so expressive. But I think as captain, he can be a little bit behind the play sometimes. And I think the same's true a little bit with Joe Root. So it's going to be interesting to see how they go, because we've had a bit of a situation, probably not just in England and India, but Australia appointing Stephen Smith, who's their best player. New Zealand have done the same with Kane Williamson. It's almost like, well, you're guaranteed a position in this team, so we're going to trust you with the captaincy. I think there's probably better options in terms of captaincy, probably in both countries. But I think also, I think with Virat Kohli specifically, you might detract from his overall game if you took the responsibility from him, because he seems to me the sort of guy that rises to the challenge individually because he's actually seen as being in charge of that side.
Yeah, and there's been quite a lot of chat about Kohli's captaincy and who can replace him, and or whether he should be replaced after the series loss and all of that. The Indian Twitter universe has been going nuts about all of this stuff for a while. I don't think you can, because as a character, who's going to captain Virat Kohli?
Exactly.
I think he's India's most successful Test captain. He has done well. Well, he's won a Test in South Africa and he's won a Test in England now. He's come close in South Africa as well as England. He's scoring lots of runs, so you can't say that captaincy is affecting his batting. What he does need, though, I think, in the dressing room is a strong character that is a good tactician. He used to have that in a guy called Anil Kumble, one of the guys on the list above Jimmy Anderson. A clever bowler, a smart India captain, knows strategy, knows how to take wickets, knows how to win games. They didn't get on, and Kohli won the battle of those wills. And so he's got Ravi Shastri, who isn't really doing much coaching. He seems to be more of a cheerleader, which it's not what Indian cricket needs, not Test cricket in any event. I mean, you can get away with a lot in one-day cricket. Test cricket needs tacticians, you need strategists, you need to know when to attack and when to defend. And at this point, Kohli kind of doesn't really know what to do. He just seems bereft of ideas once his fast bowlers just stop taking wickets for him.
India certainly isn't a country where you need a cheerleader. You don't need to get Indians excited about cricket, do you? But I wonder with Joe Root as well, DJ, because with Alastair Cook going, Alastair Cook was definitely one of the brains in that England team and stood alongside Joe Root at slip this series, or towards the end of the series when Joe Root realised nobody else could catch, and in the dressing room too. I think Alastair Cook's going to be as big a miss in terms of his tactical input as he probably was in terms of his run scoring at times. And I think it'll be interesting to see how Root goes this winter without Alastair Cook's ear to bend, and even if it's just as a sounding board, I think Alastair Cook was always there for Joe Root to just bounce ideas off.
That's absolutely right. I mean, you'll only realize what you're missing once he's gone, I think. We did the same with people like Sachin, Sehwag, Lakshman, Ganguly, Dravid. All of these guys were master tacticians of the game as well. Maybe not so much Sehwag. Sehwag's just a great batsman. But yes, I think Joe Root will miss that. And the other point is with Jimmy Anderson and Stuart Broad, we saw that in one of the Test matches, I think it was Southampton, where the two bowlers kind of just took over the field placing, which didn't go down too well with Root. And I think Cook counterbalanced that a little bit as a senior man, kind of throwing his weight behind Root. And it'd be interesting to see how Root deals with Broad and Anderson, both strong characters in their own right and more senior to him in the team, once Alastair Cook isn't around. I'd be interested to see that dynamic. I
think Root's got their respect, so I don't think it's going to be all-out war, but I know what you mean. I also think there might be a potential for... I think Joe Root loves Alastair Cook, but you have to remember that Alastair Cook was Joe Root's captain for a long time, and Joe Root's always probably seen him as being the senior man. So with him gone, it might actually free Root up a little bit to be his own man a little bit more, not always thinking, should I ask Cookie, should I not ask Cookie? So there may be that element to the relationship too. So it might be a negative in some in some respects, but a positive in others. So it is going to be very interesting, I think, to see how that develops over the next few months. Should we have a look at the bowling stats, DJ? Because obviously the bowlers seem to be dominant throughout the 5-test series. Jimmy Anderson, 24 wickets, 6 more than anybody else in the series for just 435 runs, 18.12 average. There's no coincidence he's got to the top of his game and to the top of the pace bowling charts, because series after series, he's just on the money. I'd be interested to know what you think as an Indian watching this series when you see Jimmy Anderson taking that ball. He's always a threat, isn't he?
Yeah, yes. I mean, him and Broad, in the conditions you have in England, they are the best two bowlers you could hope to have. And the number, I'm not sure anyone can count the number of test matches they have just won off their own. I
think they've got 997 test wickets between them.
Well, that tells a story, doesn't it? I mean, it's these two guys who've turned up day after day, hit a length, hit a line, and just take wickets for fun. I mean, yeah, there are a lot of wickets. And I was at Lord's when they bowled India out again for not very many, and it's just unstoppable once they both get on a roll. It's hard to see where you're getting a run from. And, I mean, it's been like that for many years. So hopefully they've got a few more years in them, the two of them as a fast bowling partnership. But they are the best in the world at what they do, which is swing and seam teams out.
It was interesting what Jimmy Anderson was saying. You kind of harked at it earlier about going away, maybe not being quite so successful away, although the stats, as you said, don't necessarily support that. But he was talking earlier on today about when the ball wasn't swinging early on in his Test career, he didn't quite know what to do because that was his weapon. So when the ball was going die hard straight right down onto the middle of the bat, he didn't quite know how to combat that, and he used to basically maybe suffer a little bit as a result of that. But he said, as he's got older and he's understood his game a little bit more, he knows if the conditions don't quite suit him, he just puts the ball on a length outside off stump and bores the batsman to death, goes at 1 and over, keeps himself in the game, and can then maybe come back later when the ball's doing a little bit more for him. When you've got that mentality and he's still incredibly fit as a person. I mean, I know Trevor Bailey said earlier on in the summer that he could probably go on for another 3 or 4 years if he really wanted to. When you've got that mentality to strike when the ball's doing something for you, but be able to sit in when the ball's not, he just knows his own game so well.
And he's just matured as a bowler over the years as well. It's what you see with batsmen. Once they know they're not playing well or conditions aren't in their favour, they just dig in and bat ugly. It's the equivalent for a bowler that just staying patient, probing outside that off stump, and suddenly things start happening for you. And Jimmy's learned that. He's done it on wickets in the West Indies, he's done it in the UAE, he's done it in India, he's done it in Australia. Yes, he may not have a ton of wickets to show for it, but he doesn't go for very many runs. And that's just what you've got to do when the conditions aren't in your favour. Kudos to him.
Looking down the England bowlers, you've got Anderson on 24 wickets for this series. Broad took 16. Ben Stokes next in line with 14. Moeen Ali chipped in with 12 in the 2 test matches that he played. Sam Curran with 11 and Adil Rashid there with 10. Chris Woakes with 8. So, wickets shared around as well. It wasn't just Anderson. There was a number of factors there why England were dominant with the ball.
Yeah, but there's lots of variety there, and the pressure's never quite off. I mean, Stokes coming in to take Kohli, I think, at the Oval as well. It just showed he was kind of ambling in, not off a full run, not a full fitness, it looked like. But the pressure was still on, and there were no easy runs on offer. So it was either Stokes or Sam Curran or Stuart Broad or Jimmy Anderson or Moeen Ali or Adil Rashid. There weren't easy runs on offer at any stage of the series. So I think that's England's great strength. They've got a lot of variety in their bowling. I think almost every base is covered with the bowling. And sorry, when Woakes was playing as well, he was bowling beautifully at Lord's as well as in Nottingham. Now, there's a lot of depth there is what I was trying to get at, and it's a massive strength and a massive plus for England.
I don't know who was officially the man of the series. I don't know if you do, but for me, it would have been Sam Curran. Because
I think it was. Yeah.
I think in those 2 test matches, which were on a knife edge times, he just popped his head above the parapet, scored runs, took wickets, and just chipped in. And for a youngster, he had a terrific series. What do you think of him?
I mean, he's a fantastic find for England, if I'm honest. When he came onto bowl in Edgbaston, he reminded me of an Indian seamer that burst onto the scene in 2003, a guy called Irfan Pathan, before we ruined him by overcoaching him. But it's just the joy of left arm swing, a guy who can bat, just hits the ball. It's like he's out there just playing a school match. He's just having fun and he's enjoying it and you can see it. And he was at the Oval signing autographs for the kids, posing for selfies at the boundary. He's just loving every moment of it. And what a find he is for English cricket. 20 years of age, has played defining hands in, I'd say Edgbaston was his test match. He took 3 wickets to start with and then scored that fantastic 50 with a 6 as well. And I mean, he's a great find. And England got to look after him, make sure that he isn't overworked and put into the T20 side and the one-day side and the test side and just flog him to death. But I mean, he just brings joy to test cricket. And that's what I enjoyed about him. Obviously, as an Indian supporter, what he did to us wasn't great, but just for test cricket itself, I think he was a breath of fresh air, honestly.
He came in twice, I think, around about 86 for 6. And totally rescued England's innings. And the only thing that I don't like about him is his hair. His hair's too long, and he spends far too much time running his hands through his hair rather than concentrating on his bowling. But apart from that, he's a real find for English cricket. And England actually this year have, I think, debuted 4 20-year-olds. Don Bess was another one, and that is unheard of in English cricket, because usually I'm looking to the subcontinent, to Pakistan and to India. You bring in your 17-year-olds, your 18-year-olds, your 20-year-olds, and they suddenly hit the ground running, and you've got a new star like Rishabh Pant today. But for England to be trying out some of these youngsters, I think is very, very good for English cricket.
That is right, and I think Ollie Pope was the other one, wasn't he? And he
yes.
Good. If you could just slot him into the right place, that might help. But I mean, it's good signs that the youngsters want to play Test cricket as well and don't want to go away and get a T20 contract. So it is good signs for Test cricket that it's in good health.
Looking down the India bowlers for the series, DJ, Ishant Sharma, the leading wicket taker with 18 at 24. You got Mohammad Shami, who took 16 wickets. Jasprit Bumrah was there with 14 wickets. But Ravi Ashwin for me, and they're the 3 leading lights for your seam attack. But then you look further down, you've got Ravi Ashwin, who took 11 wickets at 32, which I think a lot of English fans were a little bit concerned about him with dry wickets at the start of the summer, thinking he might spin England out a few times, but that didn't really materialise. And Hardik Pandya, 10 wickets for him, 6 in one of his test matches, but apart from that, he was a little bit off the boil. Those 2 maybe just a little bit disappointing?
I think Ashwin was definitely disappointing at Southampton because he bowled fairly well at Edgbaston to get Cook twice, and I think he picked up 4 wickets in one of the innings. So he was quite good at the start of the innings, but I think he picked up an injury at Southampton, which you could see that he was visibly struggling. And apart from that, I think he was being too adventurous with his bowling. There was loads of kind of flippers and doosras and flatter deliveries, and he was round the wicket and he was over the wicket. He couldn't quite make up his mind, and it wasn't the patient, slow probing off spin of Moeen Ali, which just, I mean, it may have been boring to start with, but it picked up wickets, and that's what matters at the end. So Ashwin was a little bit of a disappointment, but I think there were some mitigating circumstances for him, given his injury and all of that. Pandya is a funny one because I think he blew the game open for India at Nottingham, taking his fifer in the first innings. But his bowling, the problem is we can't make up whether he's a bowling all-rounder or a batting all-rounder. And he's kind of just caught in the middle. Kohli obviously doesn't trust him enough.
Do you think he knows what he is?
I think he just wants to be an all-rounder, which I'm not sure what that means. You've got to be equally good or equally bad in some cases at every form of the game. But I think he's struggled because he doesn't know whether to attack or to defend, and Kohli doesn't trust his bowling. You saw at Southampton, he came into bowl in the 65th over, I think, of the second innings. If you're the 5th bowler, you should be in the attack earlier. So in some ways, his treatment was like that of Rashid, which was disappointing. The only thing I'd point out is the guy we thought would take all the wickets didn't actually play any of the test matches, a guy called Bhuvaneshwar Kumar. And I thought that was a big loss for us because he can bat a little bit as well, and he would have walked into the team instead of Pandya, potentially. So that was slightly disappointing because he took a bucket of wickets last time, and we've handled his injury badly by playing him the last one-day game, which put him out for the 5 Test series. So I think that was probably the team management's fault a little bit.
Yeah, I've watched him a lot in the IPL. He's been the leading wicket taker a few times, hasn't he, in the IPL? And a very good bowler, knows exactly what he's doing with the ball. I think you're right. He would have made a big difference to India's seam attack. DJ, you go to Australia next in Test cricket. How do you see that tour? Because one of the things that seems to be happening now in world cricket is that it's reasonably easy to win at home. We've just seen England win 4-1 against the best team in the world. But going away is quite a different kettle of fish. And India have had a succession of home series, which they've done very well in, got to number one in the world. Now they've got a few away series. Is this going to be a bit of a struggly time for India now?
I think most of these guys will be on their second tour of Australia. I think Pujara's definitely been there. Rahane's been there. Kohli's been there. Did very well. It's probably Kohli's third tour, actually. I think he got his first Test 100 at Adelaide back in 2011, 2012. So they've been out in Australia a few times now, but the challenge in Australia is slightly different, isn't it? It's big grounds, hot days, not much movement, just staying patient, taking your catches when they come along, because the opportunities are few and far between against the Australians at those grounds. That said, they're two big fish on playing for reasons that we will not mention on this podcast. But Steve Smith and Dave Warner aren't in, and they've tormented India previously with loads of runs. So if Australia's two big run scorers are out, I think that's definitely worked in India's favour. And I mean, yes, it has been a tough tour, but what they will take from it is that they competed in every test match apart from Lord's. And that wasn't the case when India came here the last time around, because I remember being at Lord's, maybe not Lord's, I was at the Oval, and the game had packed up on day one. India were 58 for 7 or something, and it was done in the first innings, and we were basically blown away after the test match at Lord's, 3-1. So we did compete in every game, which is heartening, I think, for India, and that's what they'll take away from this.
One person I forgot to mention in the India lineup was Bihari, who came in for the fifth test. Didn't get any runs in the second innings, but I thought in the first dig he looked quite organised. He looked as if he knew what he was doing and looked somebody for the future. He scored a lot of runs, hasn't he, in first-class cricket? Had to bide his time a little bit, but he's somebody that Kohli has a lot of respect for, and he looks to have a future.
Yeah, if we play 6 batsmen, I think he will be the number 6. He's quite young. He's got I think a first-class average of 59 or something like that. And he's got big runs at first-class level. He looked organised. He looked composed. He didn't look like he was in a hurry. So he kind of got the tempo of Test cricket, is what I felt when I watched him.
Yeah.
Unlucky that he got out for a duck in the second innings, but then he could have gone in the first innings if Stuart Broad had reviewed as well. But I think he'll be on that plane to Australia along with Prithvi Shaw, the 18-year-old opener, and perhaps another guy called Mayank Agarwal, who's been scoring tons of runs in Indian domestic cricket as well as the India A games.
What's your favourite moment of the summer then? Looking back at the 5 Test series, I guess it's probably the Test match that India won. But is there a moment that you're going to look back on fondly?
It's a hard one, actually. It's been a really good series. I'd say Kohli getting his 100 in the first Test match, because you could see how much it meant to him. And because everyone for the last 4 years has basically pointed out his record in England, that he averaged 13.4 over 10 innings. And it's come up in every interview of his. And he's basically taken all of that, absorbed all of that pressure. Yes, he was dropped on, I think he was 21 when he got dropped off Jimmy Anderson off the last ball of his spell.
Yeah.
But he absorbed all of that, left well outside the off stump. And actually, I think that was just a fantastic inning. Some of the best batting I've seen, some of the best bowling I've seen. It was kind of Dale Steyn versus Sachin Tendulkar level of contest, and it was just fantastic.
Kohli's had that for a while, hasn't he? That you can never be considered a great unless you score runs in England, and he's done that, hasn't he? I mean, I said at the start, he looked head and shoulders above the other batsmen in this series. He just seems to know his own game so well, and when he's in full swing, there's nobody better to watch either, is there?
I think him along with Joe Root, who would have been the best 2 batsmen on display. Root was slightly out of form, but when Root's in good form, he's fantastic to watch as well.
For me, my moments, they all came in the last 2 days, to be honest. As you say, it's been a fantastic series. It's been really well fought. 4-1's not a proper scoreline, I don't think, for how close this series has been. But yesterday at the Oval is probably a day that I'm going to remember for a long, long time. Alastair Cook rocking back up at the ground on 46 not out after getting a 50 in the first innings. I was just thinking, well, just get another 4 runs, Cookie, and that's 2 50s in your final test. That's not too bad, is it? And then he goes on and gets a big century, plays freed up, I think, because of the fact that he knew it was his last innings. He just played so beautifully, and to see him going off into the sunset on that note and on a win for England, I think is boy's own stuff for him. And then for Jimmy Anderson to take the series-defining wicket and to go past Glenn McGrath, that was another champagne moment for me. So that both of them happened in the last 2 days. I think the final test has been an absolute cracker. And the one thing that I'd say as well, DJ, is that all this talk about T20s and ODIs, and I know India, the crowds for Test matches are not fantastic anymore, but this series has just been a fantastic advert for Test match cricket.
And you can see that on Twitter. I mean, everyone's involved. There's lots of tweeting going on about India versus England, what should be done with the team. Everyone's got an opinion, which means everyone's involved. And that's what the Test game needs. And I mean, I've watched, I think, 7 days over the summer at the grounds. And the English grounds have been fantastic. They've all been full. Trent Bridge was full. Lord's is usually full as well. The Oval was packed on Saturday and Sunday, as well as Friday, actually, when Cook came out to bat. So Test cricket is in good health here. I'd say it's in good health here as well as in Australia. I'm not so sure about South Africa in terms of ground attendance. And India, I think, is lagging behind in terms of ground attendance. But there isn't a lack of interest in the game, if you know what I mean. Everyone's still following it. It's on all the TV channels. It's on all the debate shows. It's still alive. Test cricket is still alive. And I mean, India have kind of taken winning at home for granted. So losing abroad seems to hurt them more than losing at home, because it doesn't really happen anymore. I think the last time we were beaten was by England in 2012 with that fantastic series Alastair Cook had, along with Kevin Peterson, Graham Swan, and Monty Panesar and others. But it's just been taken for granted that India will win at home. So for this team to prove themselves, they've got to set the bar higher, and they've got to go and win abroad, which, I mean, it's hard for anyone, as we're seeing the other teams struggle abroad as well.
Well, England have got that next, haven't they? They've got to go to Sri Lanka now, which is, England's biggest fear, I think, is going away, knowing where the pitches are going to be turning, because the batsmen have nightmares about turning wickets. So it's going to be very interesting to see how England cope in Sri Lanka. I think the West Indies after that will be maybe a little bit easier, but without Cook at the top of the order, probably Rory Burns coming in from Surrey to take that spot. I think Keaton Jennings will keep his place, despite maybe a slightly disappointing summer, because they know that he's a decent player of spin bowling. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how England cope in Sri Lanka. Although Sri Lanka have been in transition for a few years, they still know how to bowl spin.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you, what's your top three going to look like? Because I think 4 and below is all kind of fairly settled. But is it going to be Rory Burns, Keaton Jennings, and it's still going to be Moeen?
I'm not a big fan of Moeen Ali at number 3. I can see why they might want to have Moeen Ali at 3, because it means they can play Rashid further down the order, maybe bringing in another spinner as well, and basically have a load of spinners with Moeen Ali ostensibly as a batsman in the side. But I don't think he's good enough. I love him at number 7 or number 8, coming in where he can basically throw his hands at the ball and get a quick 50. The pressure's off him often in that situation. Whereas at number 3, I mean, especially with England at number 3, you're often in the first over. So it's a pressurised spot, and I don't want to ruin Moeen Ali's kind of free kind of style by having him trying to play within himself at number 3. I think 3 is a position for a specialist batsman myself. And although I know Moeen plays in the top 3 for Worcester County, it's a step up Test cricket, and it's a different challenge. So for me, I wouldn't have him at 3. And I know there's talk about Rory Burns coming in to take Cook's place. I've got no objection to that at all. He scored over 1,000 runs in the last 5 seasons for Surrey. He's had a very good season this year. I think there was a tweet from George DeBell earlier saying that he's now 200 runs above anybody else in county cricket this summer. So he's earned his chance, and it's up to him whether he takes it or not. But I think he's the first cab off the rank when it comes to being Cook's replacement. As I say, Jennings for me would be his opening partner in that first test in Sri Lanka, because he's shown in a series where it's been difficult to bat at the top of the order, he's shown a little bit there. Not enough, but he's shown a little bit. And I thought his 36 in the second innings of the 4th test match went under the radar, but it was a very important knock that to get England off to a fairly solid start. So for me, he keeps his spot. albeit he's under pressure. But the number 3 spot's of interest, because I don't think Joe Root wants that spot. He wants to go back to number 4. He's the best batsman in the side, and he bats for me where he wants to bat, because wherever he's happiest, you're probably going to get the most out of him. So he's at 4 for me. As you say, the rest of the side picks itself really, with Bairstow, Stokes, Butler, and then a combination of Curran, Rashid, probably Jack Leach coming in as another spinner in Sri Lanka, and either Jimmy Anderson or Stuart Broad, or whatever the permutations of the seamers is going to be. But that number 3 spot is interesting. I know Joe Denley's been mentioned in dispatches over the last few weeks, and I know the ECB and Ed Smith, the chairman of selectors, who is a big thinker about the game, they've got this kind of weighted stats thing that they use now, where they look at who's scored runs in county cricket. It's not just the volume of the runs, but it's where they've been scored, how they've been scored, and in what context, and runs are weighted on that basis. And I think Joe Denley figures quite highly in that. And Joe Denley bowls a bit of leg spin as well, so he's a lot of people's favourite to be on that plane, with the potential for him to bat at 3 as well. But yeah, it's going to be interesting, because do you go with another youngster in that side, because it's going to be an inexperienced top order with Jennings, and it's going to be an inexperienced Rory Burns at that level as well. So maybe you can see why they're thinking that, well, Moeen Ali has been around for a bit, so he's got an older head on his shoulders. But I wouldn't be adverse, to going to Denley. I don't mind him. I think he's improved a lot since he had his foray into the international arena quite a few years ago now. He's older, he's wiser, he knows his own game better. But I'll tell you who I'd love to see get a chance, and it may be that it's too late for him, and they might be looking a bit more to the future. But James Hildreth at Somerset is a player who I've always enjoyed watching. He scored mountains of runs in county cricket. He knows his own game, and you could potentially put him into that series and just say, you've got nothing to lose, James. This is your chance. Go for it. So I won't be adverse to that either. But I think the wise money will be that it'll be Burns at the top of the order with Jennings, and probably Denley at 3.
Interesting. No Alex Hales or James Vince for you?
I wouldn't put Hales in because I think he's far too loose outside the off stump. One day cricket, fine. He throws his bat at everything, and he scores some big runs very quickly in one day cricket. But for me, outside the off stump, he is too loose at first class level. You can't play the same way at the top of the order in one day cricket and test cricket. It might come off once, but it's not going to come off successively. So for me, he's too loose, and I wouldn't take him. And James Vince, in a way, is similar, isn't he? Because there's no doubt that James Vince is a quality player. And for Hampshire, he churns out runs and churns them out in beautiful fashion. And he's also, I've seen him in county cricket as well, shore up and play a long dogged innings too. So, at county level, he's got the game, but it's just I think with him, it's between the ears a little bit, because he's had so many chances and seems to just nick off the same way. Gets a good start and nicks off. Gets a good start and nicks off. And there's only so many times you can do that, isn't there? Without actually without you starting to think, well, have you actually got the mentality to play Test cricket? I can see him being on the plane, because obviously they called him into the squad, didn't they, for the 3rd test? He didn't get in because Bairstow recovered in time to play, but he's obviously on their radar and there or thereabouts. But for me, he wouldn't be in my Test 11.
And how do you see the kind of Sri Lanka tour unfolding? Because they're a strong side at home, and they've just beaten South Africa with spin.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the worry, isn't it? Because when you've got the likes of Herath and what have you bowling spin, quality merchants in their own backyard, it's going to take a lot to come out on top down in Sri Lanka. One of England's key weapons, I guess, is Paul Farbrace, who knows Sri Lanka very, very well from his time of being their coach. Obviously, England's assistant coach now, and potentially England's full-time coach when Trevor Bayliss goes next year. So he will, I'm sure, have a big input into tactics and what have you down there, and he'll know the players playing for Sri Lanka. But knowing the players and actually then being able to play against the players is a completely different thing. And I worry a little bit about this Sri Lanka tour. I think it could get a little bit messy, particularly if they reel out a load of tracks which turn square. England will take their spinners, but obviously their spinners in their own country, knowing the conditions, are going to be a fearsome prospect. Jennings, I think, might have a good series. If they stick with him, I think he plays spin well. He got his only Test century against India in a very good performance for him. There are a few in that batting lineup. Joe Root's a good player of spin. So it's going to be interesting to see how they cope. I would snap your hand off now for a series draw.
Very good. Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting one. That it's hard to beat Sri Lanka in their backyard, and it's really going to turn on how the spinners bowl,
Yeah.
whether they can match the Sri Lankan spinners.
Absolutely. And yeah, because you need to put their batsmen under pressure, but equally their batsmen know how to play spin because they play it all the time. Whereas, we basically rabbit in the headlights time, isn't it, for English batsmen? When they suddenly get on a wicket that's turning square, it can get very, very messy very, very quickly, and we suddenly lose 6 wickets for 36 runs, and the match is gone. And that's the concern for England going to a place like that, going to India, Pakistan, or any of the subcontinental sides who have those dry wickets where they just know how to use their conditions. It's going to be an interesting winter because I think with the West Indies will be a slightly simpler task, or it should be, on bouncy wickets where the ball comes through quite nicely. There should be some runs there. So if the likes of Jennings and Burns and whoever else can see it through Sri Lanka and come out with an enhanced reputation, they should then be able to go to the Caribbean and get a few runs and then hit the ground running next summer. But if ifs and ands were pots and pans, we'd all be millionaires, wouldn't we? That's the saying. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how it goes.
I was going to ask you about the other big story of the summer. It was Ben Stokes. How do you think he's come back? Do you think he's back to his best?
No.
Is he okay in the mind?
I don't, to be honest. I watched him in the IPL, and he was very disappointing in the IPL. And he had the shadow of the impending court case hanging over him throughout the IPL series. And just a year before in the IPL, he'd been dominant, and he'd scored a couple of hundreds, and he'd won a few matches and had taken his team to the final. Whereas this season, he was nowhere near, and his bowling was expensive as well. And he came back to this country, and I don't think his batting's been there this summer. You look at his stats for the season; they're not Ben Stokes kind of stats, and I know the wickets haven't been totally conducive to going out there and giving the ball a belt, which is what he likes to do. But I've been a little bit disappointed with Ben Stokes, I must admit, this summer. To only get 200 runs in 8 innings, or just the 150, is a poor return for Ben Stokes. And I think probably a few weeks away from the game before the Sri Lanka tour will do him the world of good, where he can just regroup and just forget about cricket, because it's basically been cricket match followed by court case, followed by newspaper articles, followed by court case, followed by cricket match, and it's just been a succession of stressful events for him. And I think maybe, even just going to the local pub, having a couple of pints, an early night, not a late night, spending a bit of time with his family and just enjoying himself for a little bit and getting away from the game, because he's been through an awful lot. It's his own fault he's been through it. There's no doubt about that. But he's been through an awful lot, and a fully firing Ben Stokes is a major plus for an English cricket team.
But plus Josh Butler, I mean, he's the other big find of this series, I'd say. As a red ball cricketer, I think he batted magnificently. He got 70 odd as well in Southampton.
I was totally against that, When Ed Smith announced his first team and Josh Butler was on that list, I just thought this is ridiculous. You've scored runs in the IPL, so you've been picked for a test match off T20 form. But I don't think Ed Smith's got everything right this summer, but he's got that right, and I was wrong, because he's come into that side and he's played with brains and he's played with a lot of application at times, because there was the rumour ahead of the first test, wasn't there, that he was going to come in and basically just play like he had in the IPL and just tee off from the start and score rapid hundreds. And he obviously hasn't played like that. He's played to the conditions, he's played to the state of the game, and he's come out with a very good set of stats off the back of a very, very good series, averaging just short of 40. If he hadn't come out and thrown his wicket away in the second dig at the Oval, his average would have been 40 plus, and it would have been a seriously impressive comeback for Josh Butler. So I'm totally happy when an England player does well, and I got it wrong. I'm more than happy to say it. And Josh Butler has certainly gone a long way to proving me wrong. I think I'm not a big fan of having a batsman at number 7, but when you've got Bairstow at 5, I suppose that kind of balances it out. But Josh Butler's a terrific player in all formats. So you've seen in the IPL what he's capable of. In this last edition of the IPL, he was absolutely dominant, wasn't he? And
I think he got 750s in a row or something.
Yeah, I mean, to be able to do that in the IPL and then to come back and play 5-day cricket and look equally as impressive in that format, you've got to be some player, and Josh Butler is some player. There's no doubt about it, and shares the same name as me. I'm James Butler, he's Josh Butler, so it's a pleasure to see my name on the back of an England shirt, so hopefully it continues for a long time.
It's been a great series. The fact that it went to the 5th day of the 5th test I think it's just been good to watch. I think tomorrow's going to be a slightly depressing day, but then the Asia Cup starts very soon for Indian and kind of Pakistani fans. So I think we'll be okay.
You've got that. It's not long before England go to Sri Lanka, so cricket will be just around the corner for both of us. And obviously we've got the World Cup as well in England next year. With I'm sure your Indians probably favourites with England to win it as well. So it's going to be interesting to see you back in this country next summer.
Absolutely, and we look forward to that.
Yeah, DJ. Well, it's been a pleasure having your company this week. It's been a terrific summer, an Indian summer. And it's only right that we should join forces on the podcast this week and chat English and Indian cricket. It's been a great summer and it's been a great pleasure to have you with me.
It's been brilliant, James. Thank you for having us on the show and look forward to speaking to you next time.
Hopefully it'll be soon. Cheers, DJ.
Cheers, mate. Bye-bye.